Please welcome Gary Kemp. It was lovely to see it all again then. And, of course, you did this sort of great tour back in, is it 2009?
Well, 2009 all the way through to last summer.
Yeah.
We went around the world and ended up doing the Isle of Wight Festival last summer. It was amazing. I mean, given what we'd been through together. You know, I was getting quite nervous with Neil because anything to do with courts now, I've been in them too much. I really pushed them on my worst enemies. So that's why I went with my best friends to court, you know.
Well, I love the line you had at the end. They said, how did you feel when you finished? You said, well, it was rather like being in a car crash. You were glad to still be alive, but you could still see what a mess the car was in. You know?
It was a great tour. The most tickets we'd ever sold on a British tour. And just to see you know, how important that music is still to so many people 20 years later.
Well, does this mean it's going to happen again now? You can't leave it at that, can you?
Yeah, no, we all got on so well and we enjoyed it so much that we agreed to separate for a little while. You know, we're all going off doing our own things and giving it a rest, but I'm already starting to work away at some new material, and I think the plan is next year. We're going to do another album, hopefully, and then next year, hopefully on the road again.
Presumably the great thing now, Gary, is that you can pace it. You can get the balance right. You can do the other things, take the time to write them, and then keep coming back. Now that you know there's a great appetite for it there, you don't have to do this great, presumably, which most pop groups seem to have to do, is to rush while the iron's strike while the iron's keep doing so fast that you can't do the job.
And I think as a songwriter, that was slightly depressing for me. You know, we'd come off the road and then I'd be straight away trying to write the next album, and, you know, we were only as good as our last record. Now, you know, there's a legacy and we have that, and we can relax, but we can't relax too long because before we know it, we'll be a bit too old, so...
I don't know. You look at Rod Stewart and Cliff Richard, you know, you're way off 70 yet.
I can have babies then, can I?
You most certainly can, and grandchildren, as he's now discovering. Larne Festival. This coming weekend. Now, the only thing I knew about Larne, really, was Dylan Thomas.
Well, of course.
That's where he was from.
No, I've been asked to do some literary festivals with the book that came out last year, and Larne seems such a lovely place to go to. I went about 10 years ago with my first son, and, you know, peered through the writing hut of Dylan Thomas, see all his stuff laid out on the desk, including the whiskey bottle. And it's a great place. It's steeped in all of that literary stuff, but also, I mean, Larne is spelt laugh-arn, and I think there's a lot of comedy that's going to be there this weekend as well, so it should be fun.
He did a little play on that, didn't he, when he wrote Under Milk Wood? It was set in a fictional village called Llaregub, and if you do Llaregub backwards, it's all, which is... Try not to say rude words at 3:30 in the afternoon. Yeah, literary knowledge. So, more work carries on, but you're carrying on with the acting. There's a part in Casualty, I think, you've done recently, right?
Yeah, you know, I'm a bit like Wurzel Gummidge. I have these kind of heads that I have to wear, so when I'm doing music, I can't imagine that I'm an actor, and then now I'm sort of not doing music so much. You know, I've rung up my agent, I said, any chance of some work? And I did this couple of weeks on Casualty, which I loved. It's a very professionally put together show, wonderful.
I'd forgotten that you'd started with the acting so young. I think you were 11, weren't you?
Well, yeah, a little bit even younger when I first started, but 11, yeah, when I did a Children's Film Foundation movie.
Hide and Seek?
Hide and Seek, yeah.
So how did that come about? How did you manage to get into film at 11?
Well, across the road from where I lived, a wonderful woman called Anna Scher set up a drama club.
That's right.
And just for working-class kids, and so my generation was Pauline Quirk and Linda Robson and Phil Daniels.
Oh, good vintage.
It was, yeah, and we suddenly found ourselves making films and making a little bit of money. And I put my money aside when I was 11 from that film and bought my first electric guitar with it. So one kind of moved into the other.
But a man who's accomplished in both areas now, both in acting and in the pop world, and who has seen quite a lot, lived through quite a lot, if you sat down with a young pop star who was coming out today, someone like Katie Waste, I mean, what advice would you give? I know you'd say, oh, they've got to live it, but I mean, if you could say, look, I'll tell you one bit of advice, what would you give to somebody young coming into pop?
Well, my advice is not to take too much advice from older people. There seems to be too much of that at the moment, you know, the sort of Svengali A&R men, and I do think that, you know, pop music is great because it's by young people, for young people, and it needs to come from the street rather than from the office.
Not manufactured.
Exactly. So even though Katie's been through that, to a certain extent, although I think she remained true to herself in that show, it's fair to say, I think that's the way forward, you know, to believe in your own ideas. You know, Spandau and Duran came from a time when, you know, we wrote, produced, imagined everything, and it all our own ideas, as it were, and it seemed to be successful everywhere.
Do you think there's pop music about today that you enjoy listening to still?
My son's actually, my 20-year-old, who's got a band together at the moment, and him and his lead singer came round the other day to play me some songs. I was absolutely blown away.
I actually think he was blown away if you liked him.
So
bless your heart. Good-looking lad. Ladies and gentlemen, Gary Kemp. Barry Kemp.